it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to day 6 of my 2022 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Hello Bluebird Meadow Bunnies. And I want to use some pattern paper from the Simple Stories Happy Hearts collection. So I'm going to flip through until I find an inspiration piece. I was going back and forth between these two florals, but I ended up going with the smaller print. I'm going to tuck that under my cardstock panel so that I can color with my Copics to match. The images are stamped in Lawn Fawn jet black ink on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock. I'm going to start with the bunny on the left, and I'm going to give him a base coat using E000 and E00, just adding a little bit of shading here and there, and then I'm going to go back and add in some more details in just a bit. So I started with that E00, and then I'm blending out with the E000, but I'm leaving the majority of that image to be white. I will go in with my colorless blender and just help that fade a little bit more so there's no harsh line. But like I said, I'm going to be adding a lot of details, so a lot of this base coat is going to get covered up. I just don't always know where I'm going to go. I kind of just go here and there, and so having that base coat underneath just kind of helps so I don't have to go back and try to add shading in between the little dots and details that I'm going to add. So I'm using E31, E33, and E35 for that, and I'm giving him a few little spots on his ears. I'm going to do a little spot around his eye, and then also down his head and his back. And so I'm just using that E35 to kind of dot that in. I want to give it a little bit of a textural look so it looks fluffy. And then I'm going to come in with the E33 and go right over the edge of the E35, just adding a few more of those dots and bringing that ring around his eye a little bit more forward. I'll finish that ring with the E31, and then I'm going to add in some more little spots, just kind of pouncing the tip of that marker down to add that detail and, you know, helping it fade a little bit as it comes into the white area. And that's going to pretty much finish his brown bits off. I brought that down a little bit further down his nose. And then for the second guy, I decided to actually start with these browns since I already had them out, and just kind of see how it went and if I even needed the lighter shades underneath or not. So I started with that E35. For this guy, I'm going to give him one solid brown ear, and then I'm going to do the same thing down the back of his head and body, but I knew he was going to be more brown than the other guy, just a little bit more, so that's why I went ahead and figured I could skip the lighter tones for now. So I'm doing the same exact thing. I started with the E35 and now I'm coming in with the E33 and just continuing bringing that color forward. I want them each to have their own little unique personality, so making sure that, you know, I vary things a bit here and there, and then doing that E31 and just encroaching even more on that white space. And I do really like the way that once this ink dries back, it really does look nice and fluffy, if you can see that on the bunny on the left now that he is dry. So I'm going to finish off his brown ear, and then I did see like a few little places where I wanted to soften that a bit more into the white, so I did use my colorless blender for that, just pouncing in the same way with the little dots. And then I did go back and add just a bit here and there with that E000 and E00, mainly on his ear and his belly. Once I'm finished with that, I wanted to add in some rosy cheeks and also color in their noses and the insides of their ears, and I went with R00 and R11 for that. So the noses are just the R11. I did use both shades on the inside of the ears, and then I'm going to use that for their blush as well. That R00 is really pale, so it just softens it into the fur tone. And then I added a few little dots of T1 to make their tails look nice and fluffy. And now I'm ready to start pulling in some colors from that palette in the pattern paper. So I'm going to do one of the flowers in the bouquet with RV13, RV14, and RV17 to pull in like that hot pink flower. And then I decided to do the little butterfly in those shades as well. I just put the darkest toward the body and the lightest toward the outer edges of the wings. And then for another one of the flowers, I'm using R01 and R02. You can barely see it, so I just use the two shades. And then another one I'm going to do in R12 and R14. So I'm doing like that darker coral colored flower in the pattern paper with that. That was the closest I could get. And then for the pale aqua flowers, I did BG11 and BG13. And there was like a little berry type thing. I filled that in with the BG13 as well. And then for the leaves, I just use YG25 because they were so super tiny. So I just did the one shade. And then I'm going to grab my black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and just go over the eye of the bunny whose eye is open to make it nice and bright, and then trim these images out with their matching dies. For my focal panel, I'm taking one of the nesting oval dies from Hello Bluebird and die cutting that out of some MFT snow cone cardstock and some Lawn Fawn cilantro cardstock. And then I'll take one of the grassy knoll dies and trim that green one down for the grass. So I have my sky and the grass. I also use the partly cloudy die to die cut one cloud out of some white cardstock. And then I'm going to take the hello and the love sentiments, the scripty dies from the Gallery Frame 6. And I'm going to die cut that out of some what used to be MFT Razzleberry. They've changed their cardstock, so I'll link it down in the description bar below. And then for my card base, I'm using Lawn Fawn Apricot cardstock and Peachy Keen ink. So I'm going to stamp on the inside with another one of the little bunnies that has a little bluebird sitting on its feet and the sentiment that says, "Little things matter most." And then I'm going back to that Simple Stories Happy Hearts pattern paper pad and just choosing two more patterns to match. I actually ended up using 3 more patterns for a total of 4. Originally, I just tore out the pink polka dot as well, but I am going to go back and grab the text print, which you'll see in just a minute. So those are the 3 that I had initially, so I'm going to trim those down, and I'm just using my paper trimmer to trim all of those pieces down. So this one with the floral print that we use for the inspiration is going to fit the entire front of the card. So it's 4 1/4 tall by 5 1/2 wide to fit a standard A2 size card. And then this belly band, I believe, is 2 1/2 or 2 1/4 inches. And then the pink piece is just slightly smaller. I think it's 2 1/2 for the stripe and 2 1/4 for the pink polka dot. And I'm going to layer those across the center. And then for the focal panel, I'm going to take that sky piece, and there you can see there's the text print. I'm going to glue the sky piece down on top of that. I just chose the next nesting oval to give me a little bit of like a border around that to help it pop off the page just a little bit more. And then I'll glue the grass down at the bottom. and the white cloud I'm going to add up in the sky a little bit over toward the left. And I originally was going to pop this piece up with foam tape, but I ended up deciding to just glue it flat to the card because the sentiment is so fine, and I would have had to pop that up as well for it to be level with the focal panel, and I didn't want to have to trim down like a million tiny little strips of foam tape. So I just thought it's fine, everything will be nice and flat, and it'll make it really easy for mailing. So I'm adding my 2 little bunnies to my scene, and then I'm going to take that little butterfly and have her overlapping that cloud a bit at the top. And then I kind of laid out all of my sentiment pieces and decided that they didn't really stand out quite enough against all the patterns in the background. So I decided to die cut them out of white cardstock as well to kind of create a little bit of a drop shadow and just give them a little bit more of a presence on the card. So I'm going to line up all those bits. I'm going to use my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue, and it has that super fine nozzle, so I'm able to just add a little bit of glue behind the pink parts of the sentiment, and then I can adhere that down to the white piece and just shift it slightly toward the left and then a little bit up, and that will give me just that little bit of that shadow on the kind of bottom right of the sentiment. So I'm just going to do that for the whole thing. It does cut out a few different parts, so I just had to worked my way backwards across the sentiment to just make sure that I had everything lined up. And there are 2 separate O's. There was one for the love and one for the hello. So I had to make sure that I had the right L for, the matching L for the pink and the white, so that I didn't end up with something that didn't quite fit. So once I have that all glued together, I'm going to adhere that sentiment at the bottom of that scene. And I will say that I should have laid everything out once again and made sure that I had my spacing right. I decided to kind of just go for it, and I really wish that I had shifted things a little bit more toward the right, because the sentiment ended up not being like perfectly even from the left to the right. The hello is a little bit more toward the left than the E in love is toward the right, and that kind of thing bothers me a bit, but in the end, it's a handmade card, and it's not that much off. It's just a little bit, so I think it's fine. But yeah, if I were to do it again, I would have definitely laid that all back out before I started gluing things down, because once I realized it, I tried to shift that word love over, and this glue dries so super fast. I was able to lift it up, but it tore the cardstock underneath, so I basically just had to adhere it right back where it was. So, yep, learn from my mistakes and make sure that you have things laid out if that bothers you a bit. So, anyway, I'm going to finish off this card with a little bit of Stardust Stickles, of course. Not too much, because I didn't want to go crazy there, but I am going to add just a touch to the inside, little bit of each of the flowers, the centers of the flowers, and also a little bit to the butterfly's wings and to the bunny tails. I thought it would just be cute there. So I'm going to lift that up to the camera so you can see all of that detail and all of those beautiful layers of pattern paper, and I'll give you another peek at the inside as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in any of these products, I'll have them all listed and linked for you in the description bar below the video, so you can check them out. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 more videos from my previous years of Valentine Card Series. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much again for watching. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.